What is going on, everybody? It is Dylan with Astrodfs, bringing you a brand new video. Today's video going over week 3 running backs to target on DraftKings this week. So prioritize cash, but if you look at the keys, do have some viable, stackable pieces, values, tournaments, and then if you guys do subscribe, smash plays will be added right before game day, so probably Saturday night, Sunday morning. Those usually get added. So if you guys are interested in this, click the link to our Discord, and then you can DM me and ask about the subscription. But let's get into it. So Austin Eckler, leaning towards out again. I think it's all but confirmed pretty much. I think we're expecting Josh Kelly, but anything can surprise us. So Eckler expected out. If he is in, it's risky. I don't know if I want to pay $8,500. When you have 8,000 Tony Pollard on the slate going against Arizona, 12.5 point favorites, I think was the last time I saw on the road. Averaging 21.1 fantasy points a game. PFF has them as the 4th best run block advantage, so that's huge for Tony Pollard. Has looked very solid, I think, top to bottom. Hasn't had like a over-the-top crazy game, but hasn't had a bad game either. I mean, 2 good games, right? One against a really good defense, the other one against a not-so-good defense. So he's been consistent in that aspect. And 8,000 going against Arizona, where, we've seen some running backs have some good games there. But I think Tony Pollard, if you want to pay up for a safe running back, he's the option there. Nick Chubb, unfortunately, is out for the season. Bijan at 7,800 is another running back play, right, going against Detroit. It's supposed to be a close game. I think spread is at 3 right now, 2.5, something like that. Just a dual threat running back. Just if he's not getting yards on the ground, he's getting them in the air. Only 1 touchdown, so it hasn't been like he's totally touchdown upside as well. He's getting those points there. Averaging 22.3 fantasy points a game, so kind of averaging out a little more than Tony Pollard in that aspect, and as of right now has the best PFF run block advantage, so that's something else to look out for as well. Tyler Algier is still getting carries. He's still getting volume. That's just the way Atlanta's going to use their offense. They're going to run and run and run, pass when they need to, but run. So Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, I think consistently are going to be good plays, but in this aspect, it's a really good game script for him. Close game, which means he should be included on the ground as well in the air. Derrick Henry, this one is interesting. He did not practice today, Thursday, so we're looking for Friday is walkthrough, I believe. Saturday is travel day, I believe. Saturday night, something like that, Saturday, depending. So you're looking for the walkthrough, and then if he doesn't dress for the walkthrough, I believe we could be looking at him being out. Not an expert on how that usually goes because things could be different. They could just be fully resting him in hopes of him being accessible during the game, or he could just be out because they don't want to tweak it. So we'll see. Check the injury news on that. I have Tajay Spears becomes a huge value. We'll talk about him later in the video. Travis Etienne at 6,900 is another one. He's a tournament play right now, but can become a cash play. He's kind of that mid to high tier of a running back, so you're not paying a whole lot for him, but you're definitely paying up, right? You're paying above your average for him, so you need him to perform. Houston giving up 25.3 fantasy points a game to running backs. ETN kind of not used that much against Kansas City. It's a shaky matchup against Houston. The matchup is a little bit better. Huge favorites, I think, somewhere around 8 to 9.5 was the last time I checked. Can't remember the line movement there, but I think it's a good game script for ETN. Anytime a team is in the, expected to win by over 1 score, that's huge for running backs. Same thing for Tony Pollard, them getting some attempts, stuff like that. Travis Etienne really hasn't been outdone by backups, so that's still good news for him. Not a cash flow yet, but could going further into the week. Jahmyr Gibbs, same thing, tournament play for me at 6,600. David Montgomery, I don't believe has been ruled out as of today. Everything leans to him being out. He said he was out a couple weeks, but we'll see. Top 5 PFF run block advantage for him. The thing that's concerning is Atlanta has been good against running backs this year. Miles Sanders and then AJ Dillon. So it's not like it's been a huge, you know, advantage. Kind of some shaky, but their defense is improving. The way that Atlanta paces their offense kind of helps their defense. So Jahmyr Gibbs can be used in both the run and pass game, which gives him that tournament upside. I don't think he's there yet for cash. Like I said, it's still not the greatest matchup for him. But we'll see how it turns out later in the week. Just kind of waiting for Montgomery news first to check before we get there. The next cash play that I have is Ken Walker at 6,200 going against Carolina. Carolina just lost Shaq Thompson now, as well as J.C. Horn. They're missing some pieces. The interesting thing here is watching Seattle's injury status. There is a lot of players questionable for this game. A lot of guys missed practice today, so definitely look for the injury reports. This could help or hurt Ken Walker, depending on how you look at it. But just going over the notes, top 10 PFF run block advantage. Carolina giving up 31.5 fantasy points a game to running backs. Yet again, small sample size, 2-game sample size, so it's not anything crazy. And Ken Walker's only averaged 14.6, right? But he's, for the most part, getting a majority of that workload. Seattle's just had to pass the ball quite a bit so far this year, so hasn't been used as well as they could in the run game. So 6,200 Ken Walker, I think it's a great game script for him, right? Seattle, I think 6.5 point favorites in this matchup, so that's something to watch out for as the injury news. Raheem Mostert, 6,000 going against Denver, right? Denver giving up 24 fantasy points a game. And then Raheem Mostert, just a crazy number that I saw and just didn't click. Granted, he had a really good game last week, but averaging 20.9 fantasy points a game, so that's something to look out for. And then Jalen Waddle possibly being out helps Raheem Mostert in a way. Could be used in the receiving game as well. We've seen it before, but I think he's a really solid play at 6,000. I think he's someone that you get in tournaments that has that upside. Next is Alexander Mattison, tournament play for me at 5,800. I think it's a good bounce back opportunity for him. I think the game script can help him. Obviously, they trade for Cam Akers. I wouldn't expect Cam Akers to be active in this game. We'll see what it looks like, though. But for me, the way that I see this scenario is this is Mattison's, let's say, last shot at showing the Vikings that he could be a good running back for them in the future. So this is a good game for him to prove that. Granted, the offensive line is very inconsistent for Minnesota. Obviously, losing another offensive lineman, that's something that's concerning. But the Chargers defense, 22.8 fantasy points a game against. Minnesota has the second best run block advantage. Like I said, could be his last big start. So that's something to where I want some more ownership than most, is because of that aspect to where if he does not do good, then, you know, Cam Akers might come in there and start to get some of that snap share. If he does well enough, right, it kind of holds off that for now, because realistically, their run game has not looked good. They haven't used him the same way they used Dalvin Cook in the pass game, so this could be a really good game for him. It's the highest total on the slate at 54, so there's a chance he gets some touchdown opportunities, so it's something to look out for at 5,800. I like the price. Miles Sanders, tournament play in this one if he's healthy, right? So we're watching the injury status for him, going against Seattle. Seattle giving up 26.9 points, fantasy points a game, or DraftKings points, just to be more specific in case that gets confused anywhere. Against running backs, Miles Sanders, you know, has been used as a receiving back on that offense too. Chuba Hubbard got some work in last week, so watching the injury status, if he's out, Chuba Hubbard becomes a value play too. Jamal Williams likely out. Miller becomes a play. We'll talk about him shortly. We go down to Javonte Williams against Miami. Miami giving up 30.4 fantasy points per game against running backs. That is huge for someone like Javonte, who's got some pretty consistent work, right? 16.5 opportunities a game in his 2 games so far, and this is a good game script for someone like Javonte Williams. So he's definitely a value for me at 5,500. I think as the week goes on, we get more values just because of the potential of how many running backs are going to be out this week. It's a bad week for running backs. So Javonte Williams at 5,500 I think can be a value play. Josh Kelly here at 5,400. If Eckler's out, he definitely becomes a value. And I think he becomes a good value, right? Last week was a bad matchup for him. You just couldn't resist the 5K for running back who's going to get a majority of the workload. So 5,400 Josh Kelly I think is a really good bounce back opportunity for the Chargers this week if Eckler's out. I think it's a really good game script for him if that happens. So I'm definitely going to get some ownership if Eckler's out at 5,400 Josh Kelly. 5,300 Gus Edwards against Indy. Baltimore somehow has a top 10 PFF run block advantage in this game. Justice Hill leaning towards being out. And interesting number is averaging 10.6 fantasy points a game as RB2 basically. So Dobbins, week 1 goes down. Last week, Justice Hill, Edwards kind of split it. And he's still getting 10 fantasy points at 5,300. That's a good number. Baltimore's always going to use their running backs. Obviously, they have some injuries on the offensive line, which kind of sucks. The Colts have been, I'd say, fairly good against running backs so far this year. So we'll see how that pans out. But for him to become a full value, I'm waiting for Justice Hill to get officially out. Melvin Gordon kind of slips into that role. Kenyon Drake was brought in as well. So I still think it's Gus Edwards is going to get the majority, but expect some other running backs to get some type of volume if Hill is out. Chuba Hubbard down here at 5,100, right? It sounds 50-50 if Miles Sanders is in, but he does become then a value play at 5,100 if Sanders is out. Jerome Ford at 4,800 against Tennessee. Obviously, they bring in Kareem Hunt. I knew as soon as Nick Chubb went down, unfortunately, that's I don't want anybody to get hurt. That's not what you look for. But just knowing the situation that was happening, Jerome Ford, I think, had a very solid game, a big rush. But Kareem Hunt is very well in the system. They have Pierre Strong that they acquired, so I think the running back room will be fine, especially with how Ford looked in the rest of that game. But at 4,800, read the notes, same boat as Josh Kelly last week, right? Same team, right? Same scenario. Behind a elite running back out, then becomes play 4,800 against Tennessee. Kelly was 5K against Tennessee last week, so we'll see what that looks like. I have him as a value. Some people are going to have him at cash. I don't know if I'm ready to commit to that in cash yet, so definitely something to look out for. Roschon Johnson, 4,700 against Kansas City is a value for me. I've been saying it all season. I've been saying it all off season. Once I saw him in preseason to confirm my belief in Roschon Johnson, he's going to be the RB1 for this team, right? Being used a lot in the passing game and being very efficient, right? He is, to me, he runs the same way that Ezekiel Elliott used to run the ball. Very hard, very tough. If it looks like it's going to be a loss of 2 yards, he's going to somehow get back to the line of scrimmage, right? He's going to find a way to just fight for that extra yard. And eventually that can be his downside, and he could get hurt off of it. But the way he runs now, I think he's a good piece to have in a game where the Bears are 12.5-point underdogs. So look for someone like Roschon Johnson to continue to get some of that receiving work for the Bears. And we go down to my last value, and if Jamal Williams is out and Kendre Miller is in, I think Kendre Miller becomes a very easy cash play, right? Tony Jones Jr. up here at 4,500. I get it. I saw what he did. But Kendre Miller is going to get the fantasy points for the Saints running backs. Now, not the greatest game script against Green Bay, but we saw what Bijan was able to do last week, and I'm not comparing the two running backs. Don't want that to be known, but Roschon Johnson was able to get fantasy points against Green Bay. Khalil Herbert was able to get fantasy points against them. Tyler Algier got a little amount of them, not a lot, but Kendra Miller has those opportunities if Jamal Williams is out, especially in the pass game. Look for Kendra Miller. He's just an explosive running back. No offense to Tony Jones. He's average running back is what I'd say. I wouldn't say good. I wouldn't say terrible. You could consider bad. I just put him average. It's the easiest, nicest way to say it, right? Tyjae Spears will update soon, but yet again, you could potentially have 2 running backs under 4,500 this week, right? And with some of the prices you're paying for wide receivers and tight ends, quarterbacks too, this could be the week to where you easily pay down at running back. So something to consider. I will update the Tyjae Spears with Derrick Henry missing that practice, but Kendra Miller still is the ultimate value if healthy and active in that game, and Jamal Williams is out, so something to watch for. So hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you guys are looking for the quarterback, you can go back and watch that video. We'll have the wide receiver and then the tight end and defense posted on I think I'm planning on both of them on Saturday, so we'll see what that looks like. So hope you guys did enjoy. See you in the next one.